The first time I noticed her wasn't because of anything obvious. It was the way she folded her napkin, neat and deliberate, like she was buying time before answering me. We were sitting across from each other in a cafe that didn't have much to offer except strong coffee and too many empty chairs. It was late morning, quiet enough to hear the hum of the refrigerator in the back. "You always order the same thing," she said, her eyes flicking to my untouched cup. "Habit," I muttered, fingers drumming against the side. Her laugh was small, almost swallowed before it reached me. "At 20, you already have habits?" I didn't know how to answer that, so I just smiled and reached for the sugar I didn't need. She went back to folding the napkin, this time in half, then in half again, her fingers smoothing it down each time. We weren't supposed to meet like this. At least, not often enough for it to mean something. But I found myself timing my errands, drifting past her place, finding excuses to stop in when I knew she might be here. She wasn't oblivious. Her eyes would lift, catch me halfway through pretending I hadn't been waiting for her. The silence between us always lasted longer than I thought it should. She didn't rush to fill it, and I never trusted myself enough to. "Did you get my message last night?" I asked finally. She paused, her thumb brushing along the edge of the folded napkin. "I saw it. Not answered it. My phone had felt heavier than usual when I slid it into my pocket this morning. The unsent words still sitting in drafts. Things I couldn't bring myself to say. I wanted to tell her the cafe felt emptier without her. That I had replayed the sound of her laugh like it meant more than it should. Instead, I said nothing, sipping coffee gone cold. She looked at me then, really looked, like she was weighing something. Then her voice dropped low, almost swallowed by the hum of the place. "If anyone finds out, we're finished." I froze. She said it like a warning, but also like a confession. And all I could think about was the way her eyes didn't leave mine when she said it. "Finished," I whispered, not even sure if I wanted her to explain. Her lips pressed into a line. She shook her head lightly, as if she regretted letting it slip. Forget I said that. But I couldn't. Not then, not later. The words looped in my head while I sat at my desk that afternoon, phone turned face down, fingers hovering over it, like maybe she'd call first. She never did. By the time evening fell, the streetlights outside my window flickered on, and I found myself staring at her number again. I typed 3 different messages, erased them all. Every one of them felt either too much or not enough. And then, at almost midnight, my screen lit up. "Don't come tomorrow." No explanation. No signature. Just those 3 words. I read them over and over until the light from the phone blurred into the dark of the room. And all I could think was, did she mean the cafe? Or did she mean us? I didn't see her the next day, or the one after. By the 3rd morning, the cafe felt like a stage where someone had forgotten their cue. I sat alone, pretending to scroll, the empty chair across from me heavier than it should have been. When I finally saw her again, it wasn't here. It was outside her gate. She was carrying groceries, one bag heavier than the rest, and before I could think better of it, I was jogging across the street. "Let me," I said, reaching for the bag. She hesitated, the kind of pause that felt longer than it really was, then handed it over. Her fingers brushed mine. Cool, brief, and enough to set my chest racing. Inside, her place smelled faintly of tea and books. I set the bag on the counter and tried not to look like I was memorizing everything. She poured hot water into a chipped mug, slid it toward me without asking. "You don't have to keep showing up," she said softly. I wasn't planning on it. I tried for a smile. It landed crooked. But then I did. That got a laugh out of her, quick and quiet. She sat down, hands wrapped around her cup, and for the first time in days, I felt the air loosen. "I used to come here with my son," she said suddenly, eyes fixed on the steam rising from her tea. "Before he moved out. He hated this mug." Her voice carried something I didn't have the right to touch. I nodded anyway, though my chest tightened at the word son. She must have noticed, because she gave me a look, half warning, half kind. "You know how this must look." "Yeah." My fingers drummed against the table, the same restless rhythm as in the cafe. "I think about it all the time." Her lips parted, but no words came. She looked away, into the small window over the sink, where the glass caught the gray of the afternoon. I thought about all the ways people might see us if they knew. Her age, my age. The kind of story that travels too fast, stripped of anything real. But sitting here, with her just across the table, the risk felt like background noise. We didn't say much after that. She opened the bag, set fruit in a bowl, lined up cans in the cupboard. I stood to help, though she didn't ask. At one point, we reached for the same jar, and her hand closed over mine. Neither of us moved for a second. Her skin was warm this time. She pulled back quickly, clearing her throat. "Careful," she murmured, as if the jar might break. But I heard it differently. Later, when I walked out, she stood in the doorway. I turned once, halfway down the path, and she was still there, her arms crossed like she was holding something in. She didn't wave. She didn't smile. She just looked at me, steady, like she was measuring the distance between what we were and what we shouldn't be. I don't know why that moment stayed with me. Maybe because it felt like someone finally saw me. The next time I saw her, it wasn't planned. It was raining, the kind that comes down in sheets, and I ducked into the bookstore on the corner. She was already there, flipping through a hardback like she'd been waiting for the storm to end. Our eyes met before I could pretend I hadn't noticed. "You'll catch cold," she said, glancing at my damp shirt. "You sound like my mother." I tried to joke, but the words landed softer than I meant. She didn't laugh. She just closed the book, sliding it back onto the shelf with care. "You shouldn't be here." "Neither should you," I said. Her eyes flicked toward the window, where the rain hammered the glass. I had no choice. We stood in the same aisle, neither moving. The silence stretched, filled only by the sound of the storm and the muffled shuffle of another customer 2 rows over. Too close. Too risky. She took a step back, bumping into the shelf behind her. "This," her voice caught. "Whatever this is, it can't." She didn't finish. I should have agreed, walked away, let the storm swallow the rest of it. Instead, I found myself lowering my voice. "Then why does it feel like you keep finding me?" Her eyes snapped to mine. For a second, everything stopped. The rain, the shop, even the stranger browsing just out of sight. She looked like she wanted to answer, but didn't trust herself. I shifted closer without meaning to. The smell of her perfume, faint but there, mixed with the damp in my clothes. My hand twitched at my side, fighting the urge to reach for her. And then, "Hey!" A voice cut through the aisle. My friend Mark, grinning, shaking rain from his hair. He clapped my shoulder. "Didn't think I'd run into you here." I stiffened, forcing a smile. "Yeah, just looking." Mark's gaze flicked toward her. "Oh, hi." She nodded politely, no words. Her hands tightened on the strap of her bag. "Anyway," Mark said, oblivious, "I'll be up front." "Coffee later." "Sure," I muttered, already wishing him gone. When he finally walked off, the space between us felt different. Tighter. She exhaled, a sound barely there. "You see? Too easy." Her eyes glistened, not with tears, but something heavier. Guilt? Fear? I couldn't name it. I wanted to say I didn't care, that the risk was worth whatever this was. But my throat closed up, and all I managed was, "I don't want to stop." Her lips parted, then pressed together. She shook her head slightly, like she couldn't trust what might come out if she spoke. The storm outside eased, the light shifting just enough to remind us time hadn't stopped. She reached for the book again, pretending to skim, but her hands trembled just enough for me to notice. I stepped closer, the space between us narrowing to nothing. For one breath, I thought, "This is it." Her eyes lifted, caught mine. We both leaned, just barely, before she pulled back. "Not far. Just enough." "We can't," she whispered. But her voice broke on the last word. We walked without planning it. The rain had stopped hours ago, leaving the streets damp, the air heavy with the smell of wet leaves. She carried her coat over her arm instead of wearing it. I kept my hands shoved deep into my pockets, afraid of what they might do if I let them out. We ended up on a bench near the park, the kind no one ever sits on unless they need a moment. She lowered herself slowly, brushing water droplets from the wooden slats. I sat beside her, not too close, not far either. "You've been avoiding me," I said, the words coming out sharper than I intended. She glanced at me, then down at her hands. "I've been careful." Same thing. A pause. The faint hum of a street lamp above us. She didn't argue, didn't deny it. "You think I don't notice?" I went on, softer now. "The way you leave before I arrive. The way you vanish." Her lips pressed into a line. "It's safer that way." "For who?" That one landed. She flinched, just barely, then pulled her coat tighter around her lap though the air wasn't cold. I looked at her profile, the curve of her jaw, the shadows beneath her eyes. Something in me tightened. "Is it because of him? Your son?" Her head snapped toward me, startled. Don't. I stopped, raking a hand through my hair. I don't know what this is, but it doesn't feel one-sided. And if I'm wrong, tell me now. The silence stretched, unbearable. Her fingers twisted the fabric of her coat. You're not wrong, she whispered finally. It should have felt like a victory. It didn't. It landed like a weight. She exhaled, long and shaky. Do you know what it's like, being looked at this way after so long? To feel wanted again? And hating yourself for needing it. Her voice cracked on the last word, and my chest tightened. I don't hate you, I said quietly. Her eyes flicked to mine, searching, like she wanted to believe me, but couldn't let herself. Then what happens when someone finds out? She asked. I swallowed, throat dry. Maybe we stop caring what they think. A humorless laugh escaped her, too soft to carry. That's easy for you to say. We sat in silence, the world shrinking down to the sound of our breathing. I thought about reaching for her hand, thought about leaning the few inches between us. My whole body leaned without moving. She must have felt it, because her lips parted, her gaze dropping once to my mouth before darting away. Say it, I whispered. Her voice trembled. If I say it, I can't take it back. The park around us was still. Even the street lamp buzz faded in my ears. I turned toward her fully, heart pounding. Then don't take it back. She stared at me, caught between running and falling. Her hand lifted slightly from her lap, hovered in the air as if reaching for me, then froze. The question hung there, thick as the damp air. Are we really going to do she wasn't at the cafe that week? Or the next? At first, I thought she was testing me, waiting to see if I'd keep showing up. But by the 5th day, the silence felt deliberate, heavier than coincidence. I tried her number once. Just once. The call rang twice before I hung up, terrified she might actually answer. When I finally saw her again, it was from a distance. She was stepping out of a car in front of her house. The driver got out too, a man, older, carrying her bag like he'd done it before. She laughed at something he said, the sound so familiar and strange in the same breath. I froze half a block away, watching her tilt her head, brush her hair back the way she always did when nervous. Then the man touched her arm lightly, and she didn't pull away. I left before she could see me. The next time I passed by, her curtains were drawn. A light flickered in the living room, a shape moving behind it. I told myself it didn't matter, but the lie soured in my mouth. Days blurred. I stopped going to the cafe, stopped taking the long route home past her street. My friends noticed. Mark asked if something was wrong. I told him I was just tired. One evening, though, I found myself outside her gate again. No plan, no excuse. Just standing there, staring at the chipped paint, the mailbox leaning slightly to one side. My hand hovered over the latch, heart hammering. Inside, I could hear faint voices. Hers. Someone else's. I couldn't make out the words, but the cadence was enough. Familiar. Comfortable. I stepped back. She texted me later that night. Just one line. We shouldn't see each other for a while. No explanation. No signature. Just distance. I stared at it until the screen dimmed. My fingers moved. Typed out, is this about him? About me? About us? Then erased it. Typed again, I don't care what they think. Erased that too. In the end, I didn't send anything. The cafe chair where she used to sit stayed empty, even on the days I convinced myself I wasn't looking for her. Her absence became louder than her presence ever was. And yet, whenever the door opened, whenever a coat brushed past, I found myself glancing up, expecting her. She never came. I didn't feel heartbroken. I felt paused, like life forgot to finish the I don't know what made me go back. Maybe the silence had stretched too long. Maybe I needed to see her face, even if it was just to hear her say it was over. It was late when I reached her house. The street was quiet, windows dark except for hers. A single light in the kitchen, faint, spilling onto the garden path. I hesitated at the gate. My hand hovered over the latch the same way it had before. This time, I pushed it open. She was at the table, papers scattered, a mug in her hands. When she saw me through the glass, her expression flickered, surprise, then something unreadable. She didn't wave me away. She just opened the door. You shouldn't be here, she said softly. I know. We stood in the doorway, the air between us tight. I could smell the faint steam from her tea, the dry rustle of the papers she'd abandoned. I thought you meant it, I said, that I was supposed to just stop showing up. Her eyes dropped, then lifted back to mine. I did mean it. Then why didn't you lock the door? She flinched like I'd struck something tender. Neither of us moved. The kitchen clock ticked, steady and too loud. I stepped inside, slow, careful. I need to know if I imagined it. If it was just me, or if you, my voice faltered. If you felt it too. She closed her eyes, hand tightening on the mug. You think I didn't? Every time you walked into that cafe, every time I heard your voice, she broke off, shaking her head. It scared me. Still does. The admission hung between us, heavier than anything she could have hidden. I took a breath, steadying myself. Then why push me away? Her laugh was small, brittle. Because I'm old enough to know how these stories end. Maybe this one doesn't have to, I said, surprising myself with the steadiness in my voice. She looked at me then, really looked, and I saw everything she'd tried to bury. Longing, fear, guilt, the fragile edge of hope. The silence stretched until I thought it would break me. Then, slowly, she set the mug down and reached across the table. Her fingers brushed mine, hesitant at first, then resting there. It wasn't dramatic. No kiss, no grand declaration. Just the warmth of her hand against mine, quiet and real. I don't know where this goes, she whispered. Neither do I admitted. Her lips curved, just barely. A tired smile, but a smile all the same. For the first time in weeks, the weight in my chest eased. Not gone, not fixed. Just lighter. Okay, I said. Her thumb moved slightly against my hand, the smallest answer. And in the quiet kitchen, under the ticking clock, that was enough. Time has a way of softening things. Weeks blurred into months, and whatever sharp edge had lived between us dulled into something steadier. She didn't vanish anymore. I didn't hover outside her gate. We found a rhythm, slow and quiet, almost ordinary. The cafe became ours again, though not every day. Sometimes I'd arrive at 8:47, and she'd already be there, stirring her tea, napkin folded neatly beside her cup. I still ordered the same black coffee I never sweetened. She'd tease me for it, a faint smile tugging at her mouth. I never stopped pretending I didn't notice the way her eyes lingered just a little longer. We sat at the same bench in the park on Sundays. Sometimes we talked, sometimes we didn't. The silence was no longer heavy. It just was. Once, a child ran past with a kite and nearly knocked over her tea. She laughed in a way I hadn't heard before, unburdened, open. The sound stayed with me the whole week. At her house, the kitchen light became a constant. I'd stop by after work, help with groceries, wash the dishes while she dried. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't secretive anymore, either. Just two people moving carefully around each other until the carefulness wore away. Her son visited once. I expected the weight of it, the suspicion. Instead, he clapped my shoulder, asked about work, barely raising an eyebrow. She caught my eye from across the room, a flicker of relief passing through her expression. Later, when he'd gone, she poured us both tea and whispered, "It's not as impossible as I thought." We never said the word love. It was there anyway, in the smallest gestures. The way she set an extra mug out before I arrived. The way I learned to fold napkins the way she did, neat, deliberate, like giving shape to the quiet between us. One evening, we found ourselves on the same bench again, the air cool, the street lamps just starting to hum. She rested her hand on mine, without hesitation this time. No trembling, no pullback. Just the warmth of it, steady. "Do you ever regret it?" I asked, not sure why the question slipped out. Her gaze lingered on the fading sky. Not once. We sat there until the park emptied, until the silence felt like a blanket instead of a wall. I thought back to the first time I noticed her, the folded napkin, the hesitation before she spoke. And now, here we were, hesitation replaced by something quieter, truer. Life hadn't turned into a movie. It was still morning coffee, late dinners, the same ticking clock in her kitchen. But it was ours. She squeezed my hand once, firmly, as if to underline what didn't need saying. And I knew then, some sentences don't need to be finished. The pause is enough.